And hello, everyone! We are here at the SHO Must Go On line with Nick Blaemire. How are you doing today?
Everybody, I'm good. Sho, how are you?
I'm great, thank you. Really appreciate you coming on today. It's been a lot of fun kind of going through all of everything you've been in, which has been quite a lot.
Oh man, that's so nice. I didn't know you were doing that.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
cool.
Yeah, it's really fun. And I always like so I have it up. It's like a double thing. It's on my phone here so I can see all the comments and then also chatting with you here. So I'm going to take a moment because normally it says like live and it says waiting for bwaySHO, which is like so
We're
weird.
here. We're here, guys. We're here.
We're here and now it's doing the countdown. So I guess there's a little bit of a delay, which
Do it again.
I
Let's do it
love it.
again.
I love it. And if anyone's watching this and they're like, wait, no, we're seeing you right now, double intro.
It's acting. It's acting. It's all acting.
It is the best. So cool. Let me just make sure we are good here. And oh, look, I can see myself there. I can see you here. So let's do another intro. Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming to today's edition of The Show Must Go On Line.
Hello. Hello,
Here today
everyone.
with Nick Blaemire. How are you today?
I am good, Sho, and how are you?
I am wonderful. Thank you very much. We just did a little intro before. This is take two. So for everyone watching at home, I love this kind of like very personal feeling of
Oh my God.
welcoming, you all
We're
in.
making it up as we go along, people.
Exactly. So as I was just telling Nick, it's been really fun to go back through everything that you've been in. It's one of my favorite parts of doing these interviews actually, because
Cool.
if there's something that I might know you from, or oh, I've seen you in one or two things, this is an opportunity to really like get to know your body of work. And like I have three sticky notes full of your body of work, which
Oh
is
my God.
so exciting.
Wow, that means a lot. I mean, it's. I don't know if it feels like a body of work as you're doing it. Do any of our like we feel our lives as they're happening? But it's just so cool to know there's stuff out there.
Yes, there definitely is. So we're gonna kind of like popcorn through all the different things and maybe go back and forth. Um, but today is the anniversary of Glory Days.
It is. It is.
So the perfect place to start. Can you tell me like where that came from and what that process was like?
Man. So when I was in middle school, I had no friends. I was like a typical nerdy theater kid. And it really took me until like sophomore year of high school to like find like real strong connections with other people my age. And I found them doing musicals. And it was actually a production of Grease, where I met three guys who I'm still super close with. Two of them were in my wedding. And our friendship was very real. And uh, it really like sort of like family. It was that first feeling of like, oh, this is sort of sibling rivalry, and there's a certain like hierarchy within these four people, but we're sort of still safe from the world, and that feels really sacred. And it was until graduation of high school, and that was sort of the first big transition in my life, I guess. Middle school to high school, comparatively, once you have some life to look back on, that like leaving home is just its own big deal. And I was really adamant about keeping that friendship strong as while we were gone. But so much kind of imperceptible changed in that year. And our friendship really, really fractured in a way, and sort of took time to find a new shape. And I just thought that was really interesting. And I was talking about it with a buddy of mine who was outside of those, like that core four, this guy named James Gardner, who I was super close with, and sort of like watched us as a team, as there are these sort of like, it's not a clique, but it's like these people just click. And he was watching us and he was like, yeah, it's sort of like this four versions of masculinity in a way, and we decided to write about that. And I was really interested in stuff that James and I really shared, like Eric Bogosian and Suburbia, his play Pounding Nails into the Floor with My Forehead, Danny Hawk. and the Fantastics, and these shows that you could do that someone like me in high school or early college could do for no money. So we wanted to make something like that. And the thing that we were right about right off the bat was like we could actually put it up rather quickly and cheaply. And so my mom made a poster for $60 and we slapped it on the door of a community theater and that we had done shows in when we were kids. And they put up a reading. It was very profane and overlong and a mess. But it had that transition was bottled in it. And that transition is true. And so even though we weren't writers at all yet, we accidentally sort of stumbled upon the thing that, articulating the thing that we had set out to do. And that's what really carried it through its journey, through to signature after 4 years of developing it on Eric Schaefer's couch, driving back from Michigan, and James was at Maryland, and we just, it was just fun. And then we did it at Signature, and it translated. I mean, the boys that we got to do that run are incredible. And they just sounded like one person when they sang together, and they were hilarious. Andrew Call, Stephen Booth, Jesse J.P. Johnson, Adam Halpin, shout out. And we got really good reviews. And it was all still so fun. It was just totally without any, like, I want this to go to Broadway, which of course is the way to make things gel. If you're thinking about that, which when we got the opportunity to start thinking about that, it fractured the group once again. And it's really hard. We moved, this is a little bit of dish. Next to Normal was supposed to go into Circle in the Square, and it wasn't ready, and it went to Arena instead, last minute. And so they had a hole right at the end of our run in DC. And we were talking to like Old Globe and to off-Broadway places to do it just like a nice little thing. And these Broadway producers came and they were like, we can do this. Like, it would be moving 3 months from closing into the theater, which is like about a year and 3 months faster than any other Broadway show. That most shows take so much time to think about it. And we saw this opening, and I remember being in the lobby of Signature and just thinking like, wow, I mean, we're going to do it. Even though it didn't feel like the right decision at all, I wouldn't change it to do it again. And the rest is history. But it was really, really cool. The whole thing was really, really cool.
Wow. I could not even imagine working on something and then it's like, do you want to go to Broadway like very soon? Like, yeah, let's go to Broadway.
It was really, really strange. It's a little bit like, this is a bigger deal, but the way that Michael R. Jackson articulated feeling about winning the Pulitzer, he was, just give it up for that man. Like, he's always been great. He had Strange Loop in his pocket while we were doing Glory Days. Like, that is the weirdness of this business. And like, we caught lightning in a bottle and no one would pay attention to him. And we could say many, many things about that. But he, found that show found its way because it was great. And he articulated on Twitter, he was like, never in my wildest dreams. Right. And that jump is sort of the weird, like, fairy godmother's wand that this business does every so often. It just like growth spurts you.
Yes.
And, that can be good and bad. But it definitely, you're right. Like, it does feel like not a logical jump. Like, that's insane.
It's funny that you bring that up because I was actually going to bring it up later, but like, go with the flow. So, Rent was one of those shows, kind of similarly to Hamilton, that I got on late. Like, and now I can sing all the words to both of those shows, but I wasn't in that like core, like first few years or, first few years when it was like off Broadway and people were talking about it. But with A Strange Loop, I saw people talk about it and I was like, I need to get there. And so I went and I
Good
like
for you.
did that state, like the rush policy, and we like just chilled out for like a few hours. And the night we were supposed to see it was the blackout, the Broadway blackout.
Oh,
So we were in the lobby and it was just like, I was like, no, I have worked so hard to see this show.
did you
So
go back?
I went back and I saw it.
Yes.
So
Awesome.
it is like my success story of like, no, I
Good.
know I've heard enough good things about this that I'm gonna want to say that like I saw it. And
Well, that's the theater thing, isn't it? It's just like it's for all of us. We push through because the thing matters so much. Like audience or practitioner, it's the same high.
yeah.
Like I just got to be in around the musical. And when one gets an energy, I heard, forget what actor was talking about that when she reads something, she knows. Oh, it was Natalie Wood. We're watching this Natalie Wood documentary, my wife and I, and on HBO. It's really good.
Nice.
And she's like, I didn't pick things that were best for my career. I picked the things that just clicked with me.
Mm-hmm.
Where I was like, oh, I know that person. I can be that person. And it's the same with the shows that you love. It's just like I love Big the Musical. The anniversary of Big the Musical's opening was the other day, and I know Danny Jenkins really well now, who was the lead in that, was like a hero of mine when I was a kid. And I love that show, and it's like a flop. But like that's one of the great things about musicals is like it's a private link, and it's like everyone's together, but you pick, and people are like, no, I love Merrily We Roll Along. And people are like, no, it doesn't work. And it's just like, well, what are you going to do? You're going to take my taste away?
Right, exactly. And the interesting thing about Glory Days is it makes me think of like, I have a few friends from camp that like, growing up, I like to call myself like a weird, nerd. Like Joe Iconis definitely had someone that kind of has my
Love 'em. Yeah, the
character.
outsider.
I love his writing and it's so much
Yeah.
fun. And my camp friends and I saw 13 together on
Awesome.
Broadway way back when. And it was the first show I ever saw in previews and then saw it twice actually. And when, it closed and people like have their own feelings, and I'm like, but I love it. Like I associate
Right.
with those songs. I don't really care what you think because like I still sing the songs to this day.
Right. I mean, it's how you link with it. And sometimes it has to do with where you were in your life. And sometimes it just has to do with like the show having something in it that like, reaches out beyond it.
Very true. So what was it like having a show go to Broadway while also being in Crybaby?
It sounds ludicrous. I mean, it was awesome. It was terrible. It was awesome and terrible. It was, I was exhausted. I was stressed all the time. I developed a phone addiction absolutely during that time because my phone would beep when I was in rehearsal or buzz. My BlackBerry would buzz when I was in preview rehearsal for Crybaby. And it would always be something important. Like every 2 to 3 minutes, it would buzz. And it was like, that my wife and I call them peak experiences where you're just like living at such a level. Every moment is important and you're just like exhausted when you fall into bed, and making musicals really is that. And it's so rare, and we all chase that dragon because it feels so good, but you can't have them all the time. Like you actually can't sustain them. And I was having 2 peak experiences at the same time. Partially because, if I'm honest, like I rushed a lot through my like teen years. Once I like figured out that musical theater and I were like bonded, I sort of, and I've done this historically in my life, like I know that I do this, that I like latch onto something and I like learn everything about it I can and get as far as I can with it.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's like better to let things coast. But I couldn't do that. I mean, when I heard, Jason Robert Brown was 24 when he wrote Songs for a New World, I was like, oh, so you can be young and do this. Like, okay.
Yeah.
But like, those two dreams also ended then, which is weird, because they were like the dream in a way, and it was sort of like, oh, I'm seeing all of the real world like blemishes on this, like egos and like people who shouldn't be in charge that are, and just how hard musicals are to get right, and the scrutiny of the New York audience, because like it is the like top of the pyramid, in terms of like people being like, prove it, why you. That was happening in both shows. And in a way, I think it should happen that way. Like I like the sort of way it grinds shows to be better, but it can also make it a desperate act. And when a show isn't working, people go to that place. And so it was hard to be calm during that period, but I also loved it. And I, learned, I got a crash course in really this business and what people will say and then do, and how sure you have to be that something is worth putting out before you put it out, and how kind of clear you have to be on the micro of like making decisions every day. Because what happens is like you make decisions every day and then you start veering off from what you meant to be doing. And that definitely happened with Glory Days. Like we never wanted a $300,000 light wall. We never wanted a band that sounded like the Jonas Brothers. Like those were things that Broadway like seemed to want. And now being older, like this is a reason also to be patient, because at 35, I know those things now. Like I know that I want it to sound authentic, and I want it to sound like me, and I want it to feel like me, and I don't want to compromise for some like phantom commercialism. Mm-hmm. But would I know that had I not failed at 23? Like, yeah,
Right. I know that's the whole like, if I only knew then what I know now thing.
Yeah, yeah. It's just the way it goes, and you're gonna do what you do. But so like for me, I'm grateful because I'm grateful to know the lessons now. But like, it was definitely a therapy all the way through my 20s for it, because it was a trauma. It was so sad to have it stop that day and to put friends out of work, and like, people were wonderful about it, and the community really rises up in that moment, and that's beautiful. And the show has become this like cult thing that I just dig, and I'm grateful for. But it comes with sadness a little bit, and like that's a bummer, because the show on its own was never intended to be all of that. And so like, the fact that like people still like it considering all of that really makes me proud.
Totally. And I think, just like a side note, the artwork for it, like the cover,
so sick, right?
So cool.
Thanks. Yeah. Signature is an unbelievable place. That's where it started in DC. Yeah. And they have always done, because Eric Schaefer is a graphic designer and started in graphic design, has everything. The look of their shows, the poster art all the way back like to the 80s or early 90s maybe, is magical. I'd really check it out. It's like the coolest movie posters, and they just nail different things about the musical. Like they'll bring something out in it. Like I remember there was one for Into the Woods the year before Glory Days went up. There was an ear with like the ear canals were all wood line, like wood, like brambles. Careful the things you say, children will listen. Right. And so to get like a Warhol kind of yearbook thing was super rad. Thanks for saying that. I agree.
Yeah, of course. It like it's one of those things that it just like sticks out. You know, like when you see something that cool, you're like, I need to make sure that like in my brain I put a little note for that.
Awesome. Thanks.
Yeah, for sure. And we have some awesome people commenting here, so I want to give some shout outs.
Sure.
Lisa, hey,
Oh,
love seeing you here. Okay, Tracy says last year I made an offhanded remark to one of their managers about Broadway shows that open and close on the same day. Turns out he was a lighting designer on Glory Days. It was
Mark
equally awkward
Links.
and cool.
That's awesome. I love him. Mark's amazing. I mean, that was what was cool is so many of us came from regional theater and that was our first show.
Yeah.
And so we're like super bonded, you know. It's really great. He was a great guy. Love him. He still is a great guy.
Still a great guy. And then Danny says, I love Big. So you got another big fan. Excellent.
Emotionally so true. Just check it out. It's the people who wrote Starting Here, Starting Now. Daniel Jenkins kills it. There's just like, I mean, it's a show about kids written by 50-year-olds. So like there's some funny like raps in it, but then there's also just like unbelievable insights into adulthood and childhood and aging, and it's really good.
Cool. I'm definitely going to check that out. And Tracy says, yes, he is. So cool. So just to like take it to that place, like what is it like emotionally and like how do you get through when you have the high of it opening and then you find out like how did you find out it was closing? What was that process like?
Uh, I was. We opened on a Tuesday, and we got we got the review at the party. I was at the party, wasn't thinking about anything, was just like happy to be there with friends and family. My buddy Brian came over, who played Will in the Michigan production, University of Michigan, where I went to school. When I was a freshman or a sophomore, we did it, and he played Will. And he came over and he was like, the review's out. Do you want to see it? And I was like, how is it? And he's like, it's fine. It's a B minus. And I read it and I was like, oh, I like snapped back to reality and was like, oh, fuck. Oop, ooh, oh, shoot. And I just proceeded to get like pretty like college drunk. And I had I had two shows the next day. And we all partied super late into the night. And I had Crybaby the next day. It had gotten off for the opening. And I had to go to the University of Michigan's showcase rehearsal because they were doing good old Glory type days in the showcase with rewritten lyrics that I had written like during this hysteria of like mania. And I went, and in the room, I got a text that said, we're closing, come to the theater. Like I'm laughing about it now. And I went to the theater and everybody was there and we were in the lobby and the producers were just like, sullen and apologetic, and everybody was furious, and there were fans outside who were like, what's going on? Sorry about your closing. And we were like, hey. And I had to go to the theater and do the show, which was good in a way. I felt way bad for James because James had moved to New York for this, and he was just like, am I moving home now? Like, we had all sort of there was a cast recording plans, and we had made a Tony performance, like a Tony like mashup of all the songs.
Oh, that's so cool.
And yeah, it was cool. And we actually ended up doing it at the album release. We did as the closing number, which is cool. Yeah. But actually, it's worth checking out on YouTube because we're all like kind of drunk by that point. I promise I'm not an alcoholic, but like
no,
we were, after openings and at Joe's Pub. And it was like a big reunion. It was like everyone who'd ever done Glory Days was there. And we sang My Next Story in like 6-part harmony, and it sounds so bad because I was like, I love you, man. Oh God. So yeah, so I just like moved right into Crybaby, and James went back to DC, and Andrew Call was had joined the cast very quickly after of Crybaby, after Glory Days closed, and and it was just like the new normal, and it was really not until like 2009 that I really was like, what? Because I went on actually to do Black Suits that summer. I finished Crybaby, and they were all, and was doing double duty of Crybaby and Black Suits at the end of Crybaby when that ended like mid June. So my voice was shredded and my shoulders were like up here, and I like remember cracking one night and doing Black Suits and just being like, I am pooped. But it was so fun, and it was all such good stuff. And here's the thing that like sounds political, but like is really true. I, I felt like not not sort of right about feeling sorry for myself, because like these are, you know, people's dreams that I was getting to experience, and I felt so grateful all the time. Just like every moment was like, how is this happening? That I you know, didn't let that down for a while, and it really didn't happen until 2009 when my next show, A Little More Alive, got optioned, and I like laid on the bed and I was like having heart palpitations, because it was just like, oh God, it's happening all over again, and now we're going to go back in and try to get a theater and move it to New York, and here comes all of that, and I hadn't really looked at it, and you know, I'm glad that all of that turmoil happened, because now I'm just starting to get back to a place of loving it just to do it, which is then making it easier to get things done.
Yeah, I could only imagine the emotional roller coaster and trying to be like, no, it's cool, I got this. But also you're like living your dream simultaneously. It's so many emotions. I get it.
Totally. It's yeah, thanks. And it's yeah, it's like, you know, we never get to pick how much of things we get. You
Mm,
know, we either get not enough or too much almost in every dose. And that's really hard. And when so it's like when you're getting way too much, you're like, slow down, like let me get this and like so I can really savor it. But it was really like a month of my life, you know. In the scheme of it, it was 10 years, but
right.
um it was fast and furious.
Yeah. In a weird way, I can feel that because so I started this company, bwaySHO, as a way because I grew up as a reporter. I was an on-air
Right.
like journalist in West
Cool.
Texas for 2 years, which was pretty cool.
Cool. Yeah,
And I
very.
yeah, and I came to New York. I'm from New York originally, but I drove cross country from Texas because I had this dream. I was like, I I think I might be good enough to be a Broadway reporter. I don't know what that means, but I had some really cool
Are.
friends who were like, yes, yes, you can. And so I did it and I applied everywhere and I got a bunch of freelance gigs and then like simultaneously was building my own company and not really sure what direction. And then I realized like I can do this all, right? Like I can write, edit,
Yeah.
produce, direct, be on camera, reach out to people. And it was like, oh no, your dream is to have your own company and be the person. Like, but I wouldn't have known that if
Right.
it weren't for that whole journey and being on air like 6 days a week, which is absurd, you know?
Yeah, you put in the hours. I mean, that's the thing. It's like you do have to do the work. And I was really, you know, I've always been proud of that. I don't feel like and what you're describing doesn't feel like anybody's handing you anything. Like I'm definitely putting in like my 10,000 hours, and you have to, right? Like
Yeah.
you, in order to be able to move, and as you did like earlier, like adapt to the interview and be like, oh, I'll drop this here, as opposed to like having too harsh of a plan. You
Hmm.
know, all that stuff is really from comfort of like
Yeah.
repetition.
Totally. Yeah, I remember the first time I ever went live on air at CBS 7 and I was just terrified, right? Cuz you're like I have a script and my producer like approved this script and I'm going live. Do I even look at the script? Do I just look at the camera? Like what goes here? What goes there? And I was so nervous to get anything wrong that I just seemed
Mhm.
so like a robot, right? And you don't want
Yeah.
that from a reporter or from anyone.
The result, if you're focused on the result, it
Yeah,
just kills your spontaneity. It kills
yeah,
your ability to be in the moment.
right.
Totally.
And it's obviously easier said than done, but like now, a few years later, I'm like, oh, okay, people like the
Easier.
human element. They like when you're
Yeah.
just connecting.
Right, because it makes them feel like, wait, like why wouldn't you, react to this? Like it's always so great when you see YouTubes of reporters respond to like a total audible. Did you see this one with Mandy Patinkin?
Oh, the one with the kid?
Yes,
Yes, the baby. It's so good.
amazing. And the reporter's just like, all right, so we're gonna, and they're just being totally sweet. And
Yeah,
I think that's like, as you say, it's why that went viral. If
yeah,
the reporter had been awkward, it might have gone viral too, but not for
right.
the right reasons.
Yes. Oh my God. For anyone who hasn't seen this, I actually retweeted it because that's how much I loved it.
Same,
This
same.
this like male reporter was in this interview. It was like two reporters and Mandy Patinkin, and he's just like it's happening or something and leaves. And so Mandy looks at the female reporter and is like, what's going on? And it's like, oh, he just got the message, like his wife's in labor, they're having a kid. And Mandy's like, I want to celebrate. Like this
Wait,
is
we
so
can't talk
cool.
about me anymore. We got to talk about the baby. Right,
Kind of.
right.
And the reporter's like trying, like, oh, I could only imagine, like she's
Oh,
getting like stuff in her ear, like
totally,
from the producer, like, let's get this back to Mandy. And Mandy's like, no, this is so awesome. Let's talk about the baby.
totally, totally.
So good. Oh
So
man,
good.
I love that. Which actually makes me think of, I can't remember now if it was the Black Suits reunion or a different one, but I was just re-editing some of the like post-show hangs from Be More Chill, and someone was like messing around, not messing around, but like fixing the wiring for Joe Iconis, like as he was like in between songs. And
Mhm.
they like come in and then Joe's just like talking to the crowd, and then he takes a second, he's like, I need to acknowledge that there was a person, thank you so much. And
Yeah, it's great. So
because it's
good.
like you can't just sit and see someone come by and everyone's in the audience like, wait, we see this happening right now.
No, I know it's a weird thing that like I think is going away, hopefully, or at least someone like Joe is doing his best to make it go away, where there's like a hierarchy between crew and talent or like front of on stage
Yes,
personnel, and there just isn't, and it's really hard to do because the showmen are out there usually because they are charismatic and like want people to look at them, and then the crew people are usually backstage because they don't want to be on stage being
right.
like scrutinized, but like that doesn't mean they shouldn't be acknowledged. And yeah, it was cool. I remember that moment. That was really cool of Joe.
Yeah, totally. Is there something about being in a show and also knowing that you're like a writer, music, lyricist? Like, does it make the acting part different? Do you look at the lyrics in a different way?
Totally. I think it's made me a better actor, honestly. It's been really just like a journey of understanding what the story is doing and like how to tell it, either as a writer or as an actor. And an actor is less responsibility in a way because you're a piece of it. And as a writer, I'm constantly thinking, what does the character want? What are they doing? What does the character want? And if I can get that down to something that's playable or sayable or you know tellable, showable, really not tellable, that's great. And if I can do that as an actor, great. I also just like am so relieved as an actor because somebody else has to deal with it all working, and I can just sort of ride it rather than create the gears. And I've gotten to work with some people who are just so good that they do a lot of work for you, and you can just kind of say it. And that took me a while to figure out. Actually, was like it wasn't my responsibility to write the show every night. It was like, oh, I did a show called Found at the Atlantic, and that was a really eye opening show because I got the part, and my name was like first on the sheet, and had lines on every page, and I was like,
Yeah.
oh, this is the lead. Like I'm the lead,
Yeah.
and I was just doing so much in rehearsal, and it really took until tech, and I think my wife said it to me. But I think maybe Lee also said it, the director, and Hunter Bell, that like you don't have to do anything. You're the straight man. It's a show. It was a comedy about these found letters and tapes that these like really unbelievable comedic actors were bringing life to and singing them. Eli Bolin, who wrote the documentary Now Company spoof and the Snack Lunch Bunch on Netflix. He wrote the music and set these poems, and I was just trying to like conjure them in some sort of like self-aggrandizing way. And the minute I was able to just relax and just play Davy's Want, which was just to like get these out to the world, my job got so much easier and I got so much better, more relaxed, and I found my pocket. I wasn't trying to do the whole show myself.
Totally. And speaking of being the leading man, you know, you got the Drama Desk nomination for playing Jonathan Larson in Tick Tick Boom.
Yeah.
What was that like?
Oh, it was the best. It was the best ever. I mean, that I've had so many of these moments, and I feel so lucky to say that where like I've dreamt about something and then suddenly I'm in the presence of it. And that's something that I think it drives a lot of artists to do it, right? Is when you're like, oh my God, I'm in the same room with like Daniel Jenkins from Big, or Raul Esparza, or Brian Darcy James, like Gavin Creel, these people, Norma Lewis, people who like I, you know, copied for years.
Yeah.
But in terms of Tick Tick Boom, Rent, as you said earlier, is like Pulitzer Prize winning seminal work. Found it when I was in 7th grade. Like that was when I was starting to understand what music was and what musicals were. And suddenly that was like, try this, you know, try like a Basquiat, Keith Haring version of a musical rather than Rodgers and Hammerstein. And that led me to Tick Tick Boom in high school. And I wore that CD out, and I saw Raul Esparza play Che in Evita. He was on tour in 2000, and he was unbelievable. Check that out on YouTube. There's a like, sorry, Raul, but I just was like, Tick Tick Boom is the anthem of the young writer. I mean, it's Sunday in the Park with George for like my myopic situation. I'm like, I want to be, you know, by 30 somewhere, and I want people to know my name and all of these things. And over, you know, 30 is such an interesting crux because a lot changed for me when I turned 30, just about ambition and like where I was going and why. And is it about the art, or is it about like making money? Like, you know, just how you balance these things. And he's going through all of that, Jonathan, in Tick Tick Boom.
Right.
And the writing is so good. It's written by the guy who wrote Proof. So like, it's just playing at such a level, and the arrangements, Remus, and the songs are just, he's really fighting to understand through his writing. And he's not trying to write an opus, so they're like kind of more honest and raw. And anyway, I just knew it by heart. And so when I got called about doing it at Keane Company, I was like, these people do great work. Keane and Jonathan Silverstein are like secret weapons in the off-Broadway community. Like they don't do the big expensive musical ever. They don't value the stuff. They try to do it with as little stuff as possible. And that works perfectly for Tick Tick Boom, because it's really just about a piano and the people and the guy and the people around him. And the way that like made space fluid, and it just really made this show kind of feel like a concert or a one-man show or something. Right. Or even like a stand-up night. Like it was very like sparse. And so getting to do it was this like collision of dreams. And then it was like getting to go to that place emotionally, like changed my life again. So I was 32 when I did it. So I had the perspective on 30, which I think was maybe good. And yet I hadn't answered some big questions for myself about like, I really want to be an actor? Or is that just what I started doing? And am I going to write musicals forever? Like, is this really what this is hard? And like, I don't know if I can take it, frankly.
Right.
And I got to put all of that into this like perfectly articulated, set of words and notes. And on top of it, we know that Jonathan passes away when he's saying this stuff. So there's this added element in the show of like my problems as like, woe is me, it's all about me, is also being questioned by this show that's like, yeah, but like mortality and, don't you think he would rather be here than have rent? And that is so intense. And so that was going on. And then the election happened. And we're doing the show, and it's like, what does it take to wake up a generation?
Wow.
And screaming that out to the audience. And so the catharsis was just crazy. It was crazy. And I wasn't worried about being good, and that was good.
Right. I think when you take a step back and you just let the music flow and you let the part actually just like do the talking, then that's when it really like connects with the audience.
Oh my God. And how, all the parts you play previous, how they prepare you.
Yeah.
And like what I was saying about Davey, if I hadn't learned that, I would have overacted Jonathan.
Right.
And that I was getting more grounded. It's taken me a long time because I'm like histrionic.
Yeah.
But what's also good about playing like a part like that is that it tires you out. So you can't quite put up the same like walls. It's too exhausting.
Yeah.
And you don't quite have the same nerves as when like a one night engagement, is so hard because you're like, oh my God, here I go.
Yeah.
And whether or not it is getting married today, it feels like getting married today. But this was, it was better. And it was George Salazar, and Sierra Renee, and then replaced by Lily Cooper. Like it was just like crazy.
Yeah. Crazy
game of catch.
Wow. Yeah, that cast just sounds amazing. Of course, I saw George multiple times in Be More Chill, and I just saw Sierra in The Wrong Man.
Oh right, yeah. Russ Golan and Josh Henry was amazing in that.
Yo,
Josh Henry. Josh Henry and I. Sorry, to cut you off.
No, please, you go.
Josh Henry and I. We did the first 2 readings of Spider-Man Turn Off the Dark together. And we did the demos together. And I remember sitting in the lobby, because I think we're the same age, in the lobby of Chelsea Studios. By the way, R.I.P. Shetler Studios. Oh my God.
Oh, that's so sad.
Unbelievable. Super memories there. And so now I'm placing Josh and I in Shetler. But we just like chatted, and I just remember like liking him so much and being like, this dude is a star. And was like in the ensemble, and then found his way.
Yeah. My friend saw it and was like, you need to see it. And I was like, yeah, I will. And then I got a press ticket. And so then I went back and I was like, okay, you need to see it. And I think I saw it 3 times off Broadway.
So cool. Cool.
I love seeing shows off Broadway. It's so cool.
Oh, I saw Spring Awakening off Broadway, like right when I got to New York. And it was just like, what? Yeah. Like, what?
Yeah.
Oh my God. Speaking of great posters, have you seen the poster for the original Spring Awakening, the off Broadway?
No, I guess not.
Check that out. It's perfect. It's an 1800s German girl and like a microphone, I think, hanging over her head.
Wow.
A modern microphone. And it's just like, the perfect sort of why I do this. It's great.
Yeah. That was a crazy show. I saw it 2 weeks before it closed.
Oh my God. On Broadway.
And I remember like the actors, like the actors like took a lot of time at the stage door, and like I have these like very distinct memories of like Matt Doyle and Gerard Canonico just like chatting with us, which is absurd.
It's awesome. I mean, it's really important. Like that's part of the thing that's great about Broadway. That's kind of weird about being a movie star, I would imagine, is like it's just too many people when you're a movie star. Like it's too many people to ever satisfy anybody without like being there all day. And on Broadway, it's like, if you're there for a long time after the show, you're there for an hour, like it's so lovely because all of the Broadway actors were on the other side of that fence. And, so to pay it forward feels very good. And the whole thing is just very that whole interaction for the most part is very friendly between artist and audience. And when it is, and I think like a show like that, where it's just, and those kids are like becoming stars and they're just like, they're feeding off the energy. It's like, those are moments in time.
Totally. Yeah, it is a very special connection between Broadway, like the audience and the actors. And tell me if I'm correct here. I think I saw Alex Brightman was like an understudy in Glory Days.
Oh yeah. I mean, Alex, I've loved Alex since he was 20, since I was 22 and saw him in a production of Alive at 10, which was a musical written by Ryan Scott Oliver that never happened because it had a rights issue. And he was the lead guy. He was so unbelievable, but also just like the funniest person I'd ever met off stage, and just so dry. And he was perfect. I mean, I wish he had gone on in Glory Days. I mean, it was one of the great things to go through that process with him, because it was basically like he was hired to be the stand-up in rehearsal, and he just like told jokes. And then when he would go downstairs and sing through the songs, like, in the sort of half-assed understudy way that you do during previews, I was just like, who are you? You're unbelievable. And then he morphed into this like Jack Black, he's playing John Belushi in the John Belushi movie. Like he is like one of the greats, and as a person and as an actor.
Yeah, I've been so fortunate to have been able to like interview him a few times. So he was one of the first people I like reached out to for this.
Oh, cool.
Which I think is a crazy idea. I mean, I'm truly like living my dream right now that I was able to reach out to like him and you, and just
that's very nice.
Very, very grateful. But I think people don't realize that he like has such a nice voice because he plays like the School of Rock and the Beetlejuice. But when you actually hear him just sing, he's a craft,
No, and he can do this thing with his voice. He is one of the most resilient voices of anybody I know. He was in a show of mine at Signature Theater called Soon, musical about the world ending, actually, and about a girl isolating in her apartment while the world is ending. And he plays the boyfriend of the girl. Wow. And he was the romantic lead. I mean, he just was like the offbeat, like tenor. And he sounded unbelievable and never sounded bad or tired. And I've heard him talk about that Beetlejuice voice that he did, and that he could do it, and that like it's healthy and cool. And I'm like, I couldn't get through one show like that. Like, no. So I admire him all the more for that.
Completely. So to go back to Jonathan Larson, what was it like to do the Jonathan Larson Project?
Oh man. I mean, that was like such a cherry on top. Truly, like I can't believe I could never, in a lot of ways, I felt like I could never top Jonathan doing Tick Tick Boom and playing Jonathan. And one of the great things about being an artist is the way that it's not about topping. It's just like other stuff keeps happening, like in your life and in hopefully in your work. And that came out of nowhere and was like, oh, let's just do Tick Tick Boom 2 Back in the Habit. Like it was just like all my favorite people come into a room and do songs that no one's heard that are arguably even better than the ones in Tick Tick Boom. Like what, and filling in this gap in this beloved man's canon. And then, I mean, that has so many layers because it was George, and like I've known Andy since college. He was in the show of mine. He's great, super talent, great writer himself. And Lauren I'd known since I got to New York, since before she was with Joe. We had done Rewrite together. Krista, we had done a million things together. It was just like, and then Jen Tepper, like stepping into this new role. and really like becoming an adult before my eyes. And even though I think, had she already done Be More Chill at that point?
I think it was like happening simultaneously. Well,
Right,
at least
right,
the CD version. Yeah.
right. Yes, they had done, maybe they had done off Broadway.
Right.
But yeah, it was just like glory time, glorious. And oops. Uh, and then Rhapsody. And then like she gave me this 5-minute song, 7-minute song that is like one of the most amazing pieces of music I've ever heard about being a New Yorker. And then she, trusted me with it. And that was like this extra, again, like spiritual thing. And then piano at the end of the show, and just feeling like the lights are flickering, is he here? Like it just had that like spiritual sort of conjuring, like kind of seance feel. It was really a crazy, crazy experience.
Wow. Yeah. Just listening to some of those songs and seeing the performance at the Barnes and Noble was really cool.
Oh, thanks for coming to that. Yeah. Or did you come and did you?
I filmed it. Yeah.
It was you.
That's me.
That was you. Yeah, it was really that was really cool too. That's a really scary room. It's like you get up there and you're like, oh God, I could just like the sound. It's not the same like sort of rock club where you can kind of pretend to be a rock star, like you're under fluorescent lights. But the songs are so good, and I had sung them in a while. I had just gotten back from tour. I think I'd done the Falsettos tour and just came back for that. And was like, again, these like little reunions that the paths of everybody crosses. Because Broadway was almost done when we did Barnes and Noble, and George and Lauren and I sat backstage, and they caught me up like on all the gossip, and that was like candy.
Exactly. Tracy's saying Nick singing Rhapsody is chef's kiss.
Oh, that's very nice. Thank you very much, Tracy.
Yes. So I want to be cognizant of the time, and there are like a few things that I wanted to like try to ask you. So it's gonna seem like
yeah, cool lightning round.
So were you in one of the numbers in Fosse Verdon in Heart?
I totally was.
What was that experience like?
Shaved like a babe. It was awesome. It was so awesome. I mean, so my relationship with Lynn and with Alex goes way back. I did Bring It On in Atlanta and had an amazing time. And Helena York was Campbell, and she got injured while we were there. It was like crazy time, but so fun. I became friends with Ephraim Sykes was in that ensemble, Brandon Espinoza, Michael Minlin. We were just like, we had the best time. And the show was like figuring itself out, and they went a different way for Broadway, and No Hard Feelings. And Alex called me and was just like, we're friends, like careers are long, I'll see you soon. And I was like, cool, that means a lot. Wow. And they called me to do the first reading of Hamilton, and I played the king, and that was amazing. And you could tell that like something was awesome, but it was still not that clear. It was only the first act at that point. Rebecca Naomi Jones was in it, and forget who else. John Rua. It was really fun. First round of piano. And then my wife ended up doing Hamilton. She had also done a reading of Bring It On. So like we went out with Lynn and Vanessa, and it was just like we're like in each other's lives. And then something else happened. Oh, Alex and I just started trading music back and forth, and he, I guess they called about doing, the audition and made us all learn 4 parts. My agent called, and it was one of those things where like, I was excited to go in to see Alex, like sort of less to like sing Heart. And also because I didn't think they were going to give me the high part. I was worried they were going to give me like the kind of boring tenor 2 part. Yeah. And I was like, I mean, this is cool and I'll totally do it. But like, really, it's just a chance to like hang out. And I went in there and did the high part, and he was like, "Cool, all right. I didn't know you could hit that B flat." I was like, "All right, man." And then I got it, and they gave me the high part, and I was like, "This is amazing."
Yeah.
And we hung out in the trailer in Staten Island and rehearsed it. Brian Kali, Aaron Kaburik, PJ Benjamin was the coach, was amazing, and it was it was Brian Kali, Aaron Kaburik, and one other person. Who was the last of the quartet? PJ. Sorry. And that was great. And we did it really fast. And Tommy Kail is cool. And Morgan Marcel, who I'd done a show with in La Jolla, was the dance captain. Like taught it to us in the lobby of this like beautiful ornate theater. And it was awesome. Like TV is so weird because you don't get to like fall in love with everybody. It's like just like a week, couple weeks. I did a thing recently that was like a 3-week contract over the course of a couple months. And that was the most I'd ever done. And I still don't feel like I got to really know anybody. That's what's awesome about theater. So it was weird to do a TV version of a theater thing.
Right.
But it was really cool. And I thought they did a really beautiful job.
I need to go back through Fosse Verdon because it's one of those shows that I watch like every week, Tuesday, I think at 9, and I haven't like seen it again. And it's cool to know like there are certain people in those roles that you're like, oh wait, look at that. And I love like those little like Easter eggs of, oh, I saw you in that.
They do too. And that's what's really awesome is that like they do a really good job of playing to their core nerd audience of which they are members,
Yes. I was wondering if you and Lin-Manuel Miranda had some sort of connection because, with the Tick Tick Boom and him being in it and now him directing, like that's such a great thing.
Oh, it's so cool. It's so cool. I'm such a fan of that thing getting out into the world. And I feel like he is as much a fan. And that means it happens. That's the great joy, I think, of the complicated joy of becoming famous like Lin is that his life is less his own and all of that, but he can now get something like Tick Tick Boom done, which like, I actually took a meeting about it a long time ago and really wanted to make it into a movie and was just like, this is going to be done by somebody whose name everybody knows. And I'm just like, okay, if it's going to be anybody, it's cool that it's you, Lin. It's cool.
Right. Like, because you want it to be a passion project with something that everyone loves so much. Exactly.
You want it to be cared for. And he cast Bradley Whitford as Stephen Sondheim, and that says it all.
Yes. And that's also his, like, chef's kiss because he loves The West Wing.
Totally. And my dog is named Leo McGarry, who's the chief of staff in The West Wing. So, the crossovers are crazy.
I am loving this. I'm getting so many great little factoids. So great. So, I saw something in like one of your bios that said that you're working on something for Marvel Disney.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk about that?
I don't know if I can. I wrote the stage adaptation of The Descendants for Disney, which was awesome. And actually, I think there's a press release out. I think there was a press release out. Cool. Marvel started a play division to try to figure out how to make theater. Yeah. And they brought a few of us into a sort of writer's room, 6 writers. Christian Borle actually was one of them. And he wrote an amazing like teenage Thor play. Cool. And I wrote a play about Ant-Man's daughter being sort of like a witness to a moment of sexual assault when she's small. And so it was like this sort of, how do you do superheroes on stage? And it's like, well, what if you do it similar to King Company, right? Do it with no stuff rather than a ton of effects. And so Ant-Man's great because it's just like, you're gone, or it's like an action figure or something like that. So I'm going to play about Ant-Man's daughter. And I love people at Disney, and they're really like, they're changing, they're broadening and moving into new spaces and trying on, kind of different ways of making theater as opposed to just Frozen, which like I'm really glad about. I think there's so many titles. Not all of them need to go to Broadway. Not all of them need to be $700 million production. So it's been really cool to be part of that.
Wow, that is so exciting. I hope to be able to see more about it because that's like very much like literally. I'm gonna show you some props.
Oh, more crossover. Yes, totally.
I love
superheroes, musicals, West Wing. We're killing it.
I know. Yeah. This is great. Oh man, that's fun. Cool. That's even better. Sometimes you see something in a bio and you're like, oh, I hope I can ask about it, and I hope it's like a cool combo. And that was like awesome.
Oh man, it was such a cool call to get. I mean, that's one of the great things about being in this business for a while is, you do, and actually Kyle Jarrow, who wrote SpongeBob, is a buddy of mine. We wrote a musical together and have been talking to Disney about doing stuff together. And he is a few years older than me and was the person to say, the more you just stick around. Yeah. Just stick around because people will eventually remember you. You'll meet them at enough parties and they'll be like, oh yeah, you. Mm-hmm. And that really happened last year where like, it wasn't like Lin-Manuel Miranda making the Netflix movie, which is a huge responsibility and fear too. Like the proportional fear of writing the Marvel play is way less and in a way kind of nice. Like it was another interesting creative thing in my world. And that's, it's borne out that like, to your point too, about making your way and figuring out what your way is going to be. That takes time.
And just speaking of SpongeBob, what was that like doing that out of town?
Oh, it was the best. It was the best. I've said that a lot, but a lot of great, cool things you're mentioning. I mean, it was awesome because it was so much better than it should have been. Just like everything about it was more political and smart and sardonic. And the part was like something I never get cast in. Was playing the bad guy, got to rap, do hip hop, do that weird James Bond like villain voice. And it was Kyle writing it. He and I wrote our show Fallout during the workshop of SpongeBob. They let us write a song for a while that was in the show, a rap that eventually got replaced by T.I., but like Kyle and I had a song in there for a minute, which was cool. Yeah. And I met Ethan Slater and Danny Skinner and Alan Washington and Lily Cooper. And I mean, the list goes on, JC Schuster all the way down, Vasi Monpoint and Tina. Tina was huge because so I was hounding her from the second I met her to have her direct something of my own. Oh yeah. And it was, she's like very thought after and was busy. And we went all the way to Chicago. And then I got another job during the run of SpongeBob on Broadway, movie job. And I had to do it. And I just was like, I'm not going to turn down this opportunity for a show that I feel like I got to do. I got to do the cast recording for SpongeBob, and I had the experience, and I got the friends, and the person I was really worried about was Tina. Was just like her not understanding, and I sent her an email and called her, and she was amazing about it, and was just like, I get it. Like again, career's longer than just a show. And so I brought her a musical of mine that I'm working on now with Van Hughes that is called Space Dogs, about the dogs that went into space in the 50s and 60s. And I think you might be hearing it here first, folks. But Tina Landau is directing it.
Oh, that is so exciting.
So it was like a really cool full circle moment. And yeah, I mean, we did a reading at MCC in March and right before all this happened. But it was a beautiful reading, and so many people have their work in limbo right now. It's so crazy. The time we're living in is so crazy. But it's just like the fact that we did a reading with Tina as the director is something that no one could take away from me. And it was a total joy in every way. And she's a genius, genius, genius. Talk about like meeting your heroes and having them,
Wow, that is so exciting. I'm so glad we spoke about it because
Cool of
what
you.
a nice little thing. I'll clip that off and send that off, so more people
No.
can see. But that's so cool, and I can't wait till, the world starts spinning a little normally and we can see that.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I just hope it for so much theater. I'm so sad and scared about it. But I just, I think in terms of quarantine, like you doing this, and I mean, I'm writing every day. It's like I'm very grateful for creativity right now because it keeps me away from the void.
Yes, I feel that. So, is there anything that you want to make sure your fans out there hear? Anything for them to look out for you, or any like nonprofits that are in your brain?
Oh, that's really nice. Yes, totally. On my Instagram is a link to donating to NYC hospitals for food for healthcare workers, and there's a bunch of different things that they use the money for, and they're a really reputable organization, and they just really need it right now. New York Food Bank is also another place that's wonderful and responsible, and is getting food to people who can't leave their house or don't have a house. So that's yeah, it just feels like the more that we can do, it just makes the sitting feel that much better. If you're just like, I'm not giving, I'm just taking.
Mm.
That's really bad, and so I feel like it. In trying to make ourselves feel as much better as we can in these times, give, give, give. And then, just stay in touch, everybody. I hope I'll see you soon.
Awesome. Yes, and just to keep y'all in the loop for next guest, we have Jasmine Forsberg coming up on
Awesome.
Friday. And then we have Alexandra Silber, we have Lance Rubin, Drew
Yeah.
Gasparini, Mandy Gonzalez. Like,
Oh,
this is just gonna be so much fun. And Anna Villafane, we like there are just so many people that you can just keep tuning in, subscribe to that bwaySHO YouTube, and boop. And I have a Showtreon. It's Patreon. If you just type in patreon.com/bwaySHO, you'll find another way to support artists. So that's pretty cool.
yeah.
Thank you all so much for tuning in, and thank you for chatting with me. This has been really amazing.
Oh my God, such a joy. Thank you so much, Show.
Hi, y'all.
Take care. Bye bye, everybody.